Well, I want to introduce you to my first guest, which is Srour. He is the founder and, check out this title, the Chief Dreamer of Building Tomorrow. I had a chance to get to know George several different times, and he's an incredible individual starting and really creating a movement with Building Tomorrow. He's an Echoing Green Fellow, and I think you're really going to enjoy our discussion. So, George, come on out. George, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a seat.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So, George, you are the Chief Dreamer.
I am.
How do you get that title?
You make it up for yourself.
I like it. That's the entrepreneurship side, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think oftentimes in this field, people just go with whatever's been used for so long, and why not be creative with it?
So talk to me about what is Building Tomorrow?
So Building Tomorrow is an organization that's working to provide access to quality education in sub-Saharan Africa. And right now, we are specifically focused on our work in Uganda. We have 15 schools that are up and running that we've constructed, another 7 that are under construction.
So what was the story to get to this whole thing to happen?
Sure. I actually interned with the World Food Program when I was in college and was exposed to a school feeding program, which is basically giving kids food in exchange for coming to class. And after seeing that, was really kind of taken aback by a lot of the schools that I entered that were oftentimes in very dilapidated buildings or even held outside. And so I returned to college for my senior year with the intent of trying to raise just $1.81 from the 5,500 students who went to William & Mary. And we ended up raising over $45,000 in a 6-week period. And that was really the impetus to go home and figure out how I could do this and replicate it over and over.
So we've heard from a lot of international organizations, you have to get every once in a while, why not do this? Because this is education, right? And I think at one point, I saw on the site, you could compare your education in the United States with what you're doing. Why not focus on the US as well?
Well, I think that, it was said on stage here earlier today that there's not just going to be one person sitting on this couch that figures it all out.
Right.
And so, Building Tomorrow's work is aimed at trying to work not only in Uganda, but to be scaled to a number of different countries in the region because the need is pervasive. And when you take a step back and you realize the world is in an enormous education crisis. There are 57 million kids in the world who don't have access to basic primary education, and girls in sub-Saharan Africa aren't expected to reach universal access to primary education until close to 2080.
Wow.
So there's an immense amount of work that needs to be done, and it can't just be Building Tomorrow alone.
Yeah. So in terms of the model, I know that you're working with a lot of millennials as well around the country. There's certain college programs.
Definitely.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we traditionally have been based on college campuses, which was how Building Tomorrow started when I was in school. But as Building Tomorrow has grown up, we've realized that we really need to diversify the way in which we engage millennials and young people. So we just began launching a couple really cool campaigns kind of centered around engaging people through social media. And we've seen those begin to take off and begin to kind of learn what works and what doesn't when you're engaging a millennial audience on social media.
So what's the digital conversation you want millennials to have about Building Tomorrow?
Well, I think it's definitely about Building Tomorrow and the impact that a very small contribution can make in a huge way in the life of someone who doesn't have access to an education. But I think more than that, it's opening their eyes to the fact that there is this education crisis that's happening in the world, and that there's something that a young person, no matter where you are in the world, can do about it that's proactive and positive.
And in terms of Building Tomorrow and what the future holds, I mean, is it scale? We hear that word so much.
Yep.
I mean, are you focused on that, or?
Well, I think what we're focused on is figuring out how do you, again, there are so many kids. Not only do we have so many kids who are out of school, but there are 250 million kids who've spent about 1,000 days in school, and they don't know how to read, write, or do basic math. And so when we talk about scale, not only do we need to continue to reach more students who don't have access, but we've really got to nail down this balance of providing access to a quality education. And that's really the space that Building Tomorrow is trying to carve out for itself.
Yeah, because there's other organizations doing school-based things, I'm sure. So you're always constantly giving it that this is the Building Tomorrow model, right?
Right, and I think for us, it's a really, I mean, that's a really big piece. So we're getting ready to launch this fall a fellowship program that'll take collegiate graduates from Uganda and pair them with up to 3 different schools.
Cool.
To help improve the quality of teaching and the leadership capacity of the headmasters in very rural, hard-to-reach areas. Because we feel like we've got to make some inroads on the quality front before we're really able to claim success.
So, personal question.
Sure.
Not too personal.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're the founder of this. Is there a day that you're not a part of it, and have you thought about that?
I think, you know, that's something that, that is definitely plausible. I think at some point, you realize that maybe an injection of some new ideas are helpful.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's part, you know, you asked about the Chief Dreamer title. Like part of it is what are you doing to kind of catalyze the thinking that's happening and setting the vision for the organization. So I don't know when that day will come, but I really am excited about the new challenges and all the kind of innovative stuff that we're trying to do around solving an issue that's been around for a really long time, and I think is going to pose a big threat to the world if we don't find a good way to deal with it soon.
So in terms of, I mean, because what I have always looked at social entrepreneurs like yourself is that you're just operating small businesses too. You know, you're trying to stay viable and all that. You've got to have some horror stories of starting out.
There are several, and there are many. We probably don't have time for all of them.
But it's been a struggle at times, right?
Totally. I mean, you know, this all got started in the kind of the upstairs unused room of my parents' house.
Yeah.
Where I remember vividly one day opening up my online banking and seeing that I had $23 in my checking account and thinking to myself, this is the dumbest idea that you know I've ever had, because why would I be doing this?
Right.
But I think that's necessary as a social entrepreneur. You've got to have those moments. I think you have a moment of obligation where you feel really compelled to do something, and then I always tell people you have to have these split seconds of fulfillment where you realize that why you're doing this and the importance of it.
So last time we talked, you're heading over to Africa many times throughout the year. I mean, is that a personal re-fulfillment every time?
Yeah, well, you have to make it that, because the simple act of going isn't really going to be that, you know, once you've sat in a plane for that long. But I do think the ability to reconnect and actually see what's happening on the ground, have conversations with your staff, and really see the true impact is really helpful, not just when I'm in Uganda, but also when we do that here in the States, because I think there's a big transformation that takes place for individuals and students who get involved with our efforts here, and being able to meet with them and see them, be it on a college campus or in an elementary school, I think that's also a really big, that's impact that's really fun to see.
So it's interesting because as we have seen the international organizations be successful at imagery, video, I mean, they essentially have to help their constituents always see and witness the cause, because you're the guy that's on the ground.
Well, and I think that's actually, I mean, it's interesting to hear you say that that's a success, because in truth, that's one of our biggest battles, right? How do I bring the dire situation and the circumstance home to someone who won't have the opportunity to see it? And so in a lot of ways, I have envy of organizations like Habitat that can take you to a build and take you back to work, you know, over your lunch break. Yeah. Whereas we've really got to do a great job of painting a picture and being very transparent in how we do, you know, how we work, how we actually implement what we do. And those are really big, I think, really fundamental keys to being a successful organization that's not doing work in your own backyard.
Yeah, because I suspect when you started this out, you didn't have on the roster of things to do was be a digital storyteller.
No, that's one of probably about 1,000 things on the list that I did not have.
Changing the light bulbs. Either.
Yeah. I mean, you do, you know, vacuuming the floors, like, hey, whatever it is, like you've got a lot to do that you don't really think of. But definitely that storytelling piece is really key. You have to be a really good storyteller as an organization and as an individual, I think, to engage people in the impact that you're making.
How old is Building Tomorrow?
So we are almost 8 years old.
So when you look at when you started to even, I mean, we just came out of the Pitch It program. You probably
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was super cool to see.
So you've got 3 individuals there just starting out. I mean, comparisons, is it different starting a movement, a cause today than it was 8 years ago?
So I think in some respects, I mean, when I started Building Tomorrow, nobody was talking about social entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
It was a very nascent field, and no one was really using that terminology around it. Now you see that that's picking up, and you can go take courses in social entrepreneurship, and it's a completely different playing field. And I think it's getting younger, and I think that's a really exciting piece as well. You see 19-year-olds who get up on stage and tell you that they've got 15,000 orders for a technology that they've created. That's pretty awesome. That's a pretty cool thing to see. So in some ways, the challenges are still the same, because everyone who got up on stage will have people who say, you can't do that, and it's not going to work. Yeah. And so I think their motivation will continue to be what it was for me, which for a lot of people is, that's how are you going to make this happen? And you just give it a shot and see what happens.
Because I suspect there were times that my dad and mom said, now what do you do? What are you I'm sure that happens every once in a while.
Totally, totally. And I think it's a difficult balance to be able to explain that, and also to explain that it's not as rosy as it might sound all the time. Yeah, is it cool to be working in an international setting? Of course. But that also comes with its fair set of challenges as well. And so oftentimes it's difficult to, that's why it's always fun to be in a room with social entrepreneurs, when you can actually, you kind of get them and they get you, and they understand the challenges that you've been dealing with, and can have a really good conversation about that very openly.
Yeah. So Echoing Green, talk a little bit about it. How do you get selected, and what do you do?
Well, there's no doubt that I wouldn't be selected these days if I were to apply, so I'm grateful that I did it when I did. But Echoing Green is this really, really awesome community of social entrepreneurs who are really applying themselves, dedicated to a number of different causes all throughout the world, some for-profit, others nonprofit, just a very diverse field. And certainly you get funding from it, and that's a big plus, especially when you're young. But I think more so you get that community of Echoing Green fellows who are about the same stage in business development as you are. And you can just bounce ideas and be very vulnerable, and just be open with them about the challenges and so forth that you're facing. And it's been one of the greatest additions, and I think just positive things that's come from my own story with starting Building Tomorrow.
Good. All right, where do we find more info?
buildingtomorrow.org.
Cool. And any opportunities for millennials to do anything that they can do to help you?
Yeah, totally. We've got, even just right when you get on our website, there are a couple different campaigns that we're still running that can engage millennials in our work.
Great. Thanks
awesome.
so much.
Derek, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.